Are the fundamental forces of the universe, or rather the multiverse, becoming personified similarly to how they were with the Infinity Stones? Each reality has 6 fundamental components, which were forged into the 6 stones at the dawn of each universe. We've seen these stones across multiple realities, and in each universe we see them, they are among the most powerful artifacts known by the respective inhabitants, the pillars of the universe itself. Is it possible, however, that we're beginning to see them personified on a multiversal level? Well, my friends, let's discuss the theory that these fundamental forces now have deities associated with them. Perhaps the most obvious example of this is Loki's ascension to the title of God of Stories. With the multiverse within his grasp, he has quite literally become the god of time on a multiversal level, able to slip anywhere into the multiverse on a whim and even freeze time where it stands. Many have likened this to the green hue of the Time Stone, and some fans believe that the Time Stone's green coloration can be traced back directly to Loki. If the Time Stone grants a user control over the properties of time, then it makes sense that it would resemble the god of time itself. But does this extend to the other stones as well, and the other 5 of them? Are the Infinity Stones actually tied to entities that have powers on a multiversal level? The best other example of this would be the Reality Stone, and a previous theory that we proposed some time back. The theory proposes a deeper connection between Wanda and the Reality Stone itself, and there's quite a bit of evidence that can be found in WandaVision and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness that connects Wanda to the stone on a multiversal level. We've previously released a much more in-depth video about this connection, and while that has an in-depth breakdown, we're going to summarize it here. We know that Wanda's powers were initially manifested after her interaction with the Mind Stone. But given the release of WandaVision, we know that there was something more going on with Wanda before she was ever experimented on by Hydra. It's been stated that the stone didn't just actually give her any powers outright, but that instead it awakened her latent abilities that were left undiscovered. There is also a very clear visual and conceptual similarity between her powers and the stone, that being that they both possess the ability to alter matter on a molecular level. Wanda is able to transform just about any material she chooses into different forms. Most impressive is her reality warping powers were able to convert the entirety of Westview's inorganic matter. The Reality Stone, in turn, as it's suggested by the name, is able to alter and warp reality. But what are some of the deeper connections between Wanda and the stone that go beyond the surface level similarities? In WandaVision, we get a scientific analysis of Wanda's power courtesy of Darcy Lewis and her research, in which she discovers that Wanda is emitting what is known as CMB radiation. She describes this specific type of radiation as the type of radiation present at the dawn of the universe, and in real-life scientific terms, it is described as the radiation that fills all space, and is regarded as a leftover energy from the Big Bang. This is important because it suggests that both Wanda and the stones are saturated with the same energy, and the Mind Stone actually awakened attributes more closely related to 2 other stones. We can then take this a bit further, and the fact that Quicksilver might be pulling the ability to move more effectively through space from the Space Stone. But let's explore this from a newfound multiversal perspective. There is only one god of stories in the multiverse, so if these fundamental forces are being personified on a multiversal level, then how can Wanda be considered? After all, there are thousands of versions of Wanda from across the multiverse, and we actually meet Earth 838's Wanda in the Multiverse of Madness. While we know that there are several variants of Wanda, we don't know if there's any other Scarlet Witch. We know that the Scarlet Witch prophecy was one inscribed into the walls of Mount Wundagore, which was later copied into the Darkhold book. We also know that there are several versions of the Darkhold from across the multiverse, which would imply that there are several versions of the Scarlet Witch. Well, not necessarily. In the MCU, we know that timelines can branch, creating new realities based on every decision that anyone in the universe could possibly make. Any branches that take place after the transcript was written would result in an alternate universe that still had a version of Mount Wundagore, and still had a version of the Darkhold, even if Wanda herself was no longer tied to these realities. If there is only one Scarlet Witch in the entirety of the multiverse, then she might be the next to find herself graduating to the level of a multiversal deity, alongside the god of stories Loki. Even though she is presumed to be dead, we have yet to see a body, and it's still possible that she is still very much alive. So then, if the entities of time and reality are being primed to become multiversal entities that represent the stones on a multiversal level, then who is next for the rest of the stones? Who else might assume the role of a cosmic embodiment of the fundamental forces of reality? Everything that follows is purely speculative, of course, but let's discuss a few compelling options of who might represent the other stones. First, let's establish what we still have left to cover. If we are to use the 6 Infinity Stones as a baseline, we still have the forces of mind, soul, power, and space to consider. If Loki and Wanda are the first two, then we can pull some similarities between them in order to better narrow down our search. Both of these characters utilize different forms of magic, and it's important to note that they are not reliant on any technology or artificial means. While Loki is trained extensively in the ways of magic and sorcery, he is an incredibly powerful god by default. One deity that we might see ascend to the role of a god of space might be the Watcher Uatu himself. He is already a multiversal level entity who is capable of seeing the multiverse from an outside perspective. Uatu has been shown traveling across the multiverse and even collecting multiversal defenders to aid him. As of now, he doesn't have any explicit space-bending powers or powers that represent the Space Stone outright, but neither did Loki until the finale of the second season. There is room for the Watcher to be upgraded, but he seems to be a worthy candidate, at least at the time, to consider. For the power of mind, let's look to the comics, as we believe if anyone to become the power of the mind itself, it's an individual that's only been seen briefly. In the original source material, much like the Council of Kangs is a collection of hundreds of Kang variants, we know that there is a Council of Reeds. This assembly of Reed Richards variants brings together some of the smartest minds in the multiverse, and we already know that Reed Richards is on the brink of discovering the multiverse himself. Reed Richards is primarily accepted as the single most brilliant mind on Earth, and it's his technology and brilliance that paves the way for Kang's eventual creation. The teleportation doors from Earth 838 very closely resemble the time doors used by the TVA. This has led many to theorize that this is a precursor to multiversal technology. We know that the Council was initially founded by Alpha Reed, and was among the most brilliant even among Reed Richards' variants. With the Infinity Gauntlet by his side, he even attempted to conquer Earth 616, and he nearly succeeded. And other variants, such as the Maker, have been able to stretch their brain to increase their intellect even further than a normal Reed. It's completely reasonable that if anyone is brilliant enough to descend to the level of a god of the mind, it would almost certainly be Reed Richards. The embodiment of the Soul Stone is a bit more difficult to pin down though, as we're looking for someone who has dominion over death itself. While we might initially consider someone like Hela, Bast from Wakandan belief, or another god of death, these afterlives are contained to their individual realities. Each universe has a god of death and other versions of the afterlife, but one character seems to have much more potential than this. In the original comics, not only did Adam Warlock possess and utilize the Soul Stone, but he also eventually graduated to the mantle of the Living Tribunal. In the MCU, Adam Warlock of Earth 616 never used the Soul Stone, but that doesn't mean that other variants of him haven't. The Living Tribunal, on the other hand, is quite literally tasked with balancing the lives of countless universes within his hands. He settles disputes between realities, and in some cases, is tasked with deciding which timelines live and which of them die. We do know that a version of the Living Tribunal exists somewhere in the Marvel multiverse, as we've seen multiple references, statues, and imagery of the being in several different places. It is far from confirmed that this is a variant of Adam Warlock, but whatever version of the Living Tribunal and what it might take might be the multiversal embodiment of the soul. Lastly, that leaves us with the domain of power, which is a rather vague and open-ended term to assess. If we are to take this literally and look at the most powerful entity in the multiverse, then there is only one answer. We are of course talking about the one above all, the literal god of the multiverse in the Marvel comics. This entity is the creator of all, the first being, and the one who presides over all of existence. We don't know yet where the one above all is, but we do know that the Living Tribunal, his direct right-hand man, is already present somewhere. The Living Tribunal is typically depicted as the second most powerful entity in the multiverse, only behind the one above all, and his debut is something that seems to be imminent. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of this idea? Do you think the fundamental forces of the universe are being personified by multiversal entities? And if so, who do you think could be next? Do you think that we're on track with our theory and selections of the characters? Or do you believe that we're missing it by a long shot? We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions down below. Thank you so much for stopping by the channel today, and I hope that you're having a great one.